Welcome, everybody, to the new podcast. For those of you who don't know, I originally had an older podcast. It was called The Phantom and Salt Show, and then it was eventually changed to The Phantom Cast. That is kind of getting put on the back burner. We're going to be starting fresh. This is the LFG Cast. Now, what does LFG stand for? Well, in normal video game context, LFG stands for looking for group or looking for guild or something else that I may not know. But in this context, it stands for lift, feast, and game. It's kind of tied into the community that I am looking to build, and the three words in the phrase LFG, the lift, feast, game, are kind of the pillars of the hobbies that interest me the most, that I find myself doing and being really passionate about. So I wanted to make a community based around that. But enough about that. This is episode 1 of the LFG cast, so let's get started. Okay, so just for reference, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see me glance down a lot. It's because I kind of wrote all this out because I am better when I have something to read off of as opposed to just kind of riffing. I tend to ramble a lot when I do that. I tend to put ums and buts and likes into phrases, and it does not make for entertaining discussion, at least in my opinion. So I've kind of scripted everything out, and I'll be reading off of a screen. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you don't gotta fucking worry about a thing. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. Today's topic is going to be about procrastination. Why? Because it's something I've struggled with personally for many years, and I mean many years, and I'm still struggling with it today. And B, I think that it's something that everyone can relate to on some sort of level. Whether you're procrastinating video games, you're procrastinating in your nutrition, you're procrastinating in lifting, in being social, in music, in anything. I think that procrastination can rear its ugly head, and I wanted to talk about it. So, over the years, I've always started projects, but I found myself never really finishing them. For an example, there have been about 4 different occasions in the past, I want to say maybe 6, 7 years, maybe 5 years, that I have downloaded an app called Zombies Run 5K Training, which is essentially from couch to 5K, kind of that same kind of concept. And I've started it, and the first time I did it, I made a really good progress, and then every subsequent attempt, I've made less and less progress, and I don't know whether if that's something that I am just dealing with, and maybe I'm not really cut out for 5K, or something else, which we'll get to later in the episode. While I've begun to realize the underlying reason for that, it doesn't make it any less of an issue, and that issue needs to be resolved. So, procrastination can pop up at any point and in any given situation. Like I mentioned earlier before, it could be literally schoolwork, which when I was in college, that was a big thing for me, procrastinating on schoolwork. It could be gaming, which currently is a big thing for me because I have an enormous backlog, which I actually wrote down in this notebook. And like that's a big thing for me there. It could be exercising, eating healthy, it could be doing yard work, it could be anything mundane or anything big and something that you're passionate about. Don't believe me? Ask yourself this question. Say you decide that you want to work out. You know, the holidays are coming up, you want to get in shape, you want to kind of work out so you can kind of even the playing field with your eating. So you start going to the gym, and then one day you don't feel like going to the gym, and you decide to stay home instead. What's that called? Procrastination. Don't feel like playing a game in your massive backlog, so you just binge watch Netflix mindlessly for 4 hours, and then it's time to go to bed because you got work at 5:30 in the morning? Procrastination. It's not inherently a bad thing, but when you are procrastinating as much as I am, and when you do it as often as I do, it can become a hindrance, and it has. And I think it's important for people to also be able to differentiate between the feeling of burnout and the just indifferent feeling you get when you end up procrastinating. I think those are two very different things, and I think it's important for people like you and me to be able to tell them apart. Otherwise, it kind of becomes this big gray mess, and it's hard to get motivated when you kind of lose yourself in that. For example, burnout can be caused by doing too many things. As someone with ADHD, that happens to me often, and that's happened to me quite a lot this year. If you followed me on stream, if you're part of the Discord community, you've noticed that I've had to take breaks, I've had to take steps backs. Excuse me. I've had to take steps back from doing things just because I've become burnt out and overwhelmed and things of that nature. Sometimes when you hit that point, however, you need to take a step back and you need to not do anything. You need to reset your body, reset your mind sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And we're going to get into that into this next part. Sometimes procrastination can be the mindset of, oh, I can just do it tomorrow. This happens a lot with chores. You know, how many times has your mom said, I need you to clean the gutters? Yeah. No problem, Mom. 2 days go by. I can do it tomorrow. Oh, I can do it tomorrow. And then finally Saturday comes, you want to go out with the boys, you want to bend that elbow a little bit, have a couple brewskis, watch some football games, and your mom is livid. Your mom's like, you ain't going nowhere. You're going to clean them gutters. And you're stuck cleaning gutters all Saturday. That's procrastination. Sometimes you can confuse the two. And I personally think that it's a completely normal thing for people to do, is confuse the two, because with all the stress we deal with on a day-to-day, especially if we're not taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally, we can just feel, oh, I'm too burnt out, I just I don't want to do anything today, when in reality we could be just not wanting to do anything and just wanting to veg out and lie on the couch. And again, sometimes we need that. When we actually do get burnt out, we need that mental reset day. We need that, people call it mental health days, where you just take a shower, you eat a good meal, and you just relax, and you watch some TV, you read a book, something where you can just kind of shut your brain off, unwind, and things of that nature. But when you procrastinate, when it becomes more of a situation of you just don't want to do it because you don't feel like doing it, things can pile up. And when things pile up like that, you essentially create this, almost like this mousetrap for yourself that you get stuck in. And you feel like nothing will ever get done when you've hit that point. I like to call that rock bottom of procrastination. And the reason I like to call it that is because at that point, you are just under the weight of so many projects, so many assignments, so many creative projects that you're just pressed down at the bottom, right? It's this, use the analogy of lifting, like you're benching, or say you're squatting, and you get all the way down under that heavy weight and you feel like you can't get up. So you're just kind of stuck there with the bar on your chest, you're stuck there in that squat, you feel like you can't get up, and you feel like there's no one around, there's no one to help you, no one to spot you, and you feel like you're trapped, you feel like you're stuck there, and you feel like you're in danger. Now, I personally have been in that trap before. I mentioned earlier how I have set myself up and procrastinated and have literally burnt myself out, which can happen. You can procrastinate so much that you end up burning yourself out because, again, you're piling things on top of your plate that you're just pushing aside. Say for example, you're at a buffet, right? And you get a plate. And, I'll use a Chinese buffet because that's the one I go to with my friends a lot. So you start off, you go real light, right? You have some sushi, maybe some cheese rangoon, just a little something to wet the whistle, right? Maybe some soup, right? Something light. First plate goes down fine. And you go up for your second plate, and that's when you start picking at the General Tso's chicken, or the peanut chicken, or some of the more heavier options. And as you're perusing the buffet table, you take note of what's on the line. And you say to yourself, you look at your plate, it's already got some food in it. So you say, you know what, now, next time, next plate. If I'm not completely stuffed after this, I'll get a next plate, and I'll fill it up with that. Eventually, you get to that last plate, and it is piled with all the things that you said you'd get on the next trip. And your stomach is way too full to eat it. And that's not the greatest analogy, but I think it works pretty well. The eyes are bigger than your stomach kind of scenario, where you look at all the things you could do, and instead of doing one of them now, you don't do any of them. And then you put all this pressure on yourself, and you try to do all of them at once, and you literally burn yourself out. And then nothing gets done. That's the trap. The trap is having so much to do that you don't want to you literally don't want to do any of it because you now have burnt yourself out. It can suck, and I know how much it sucks. But I wanted you to know, and I guess the real point of why I'm making this the first episode or the first video if you're watching on YouTube, I want you to know that it's not the end of the world if that happens. If you hit that point, it's not the end. You don't have to give up. You don't have to get the proverbial trash can and throw all your, your aspirations and your projects, and you don't have to do that. Right? You don't have to put yourself in this grind of, oh, now I'm doing it because I have to, not because I want to. Because again, I've done that, and that sucks. That takes the fun out of things. Like I mentioned before with this backlog, that's happened to me. I'm like, I'm going to play, like, I cannot buy a new game until I play what's already in this backlog. And you know what? That's a sucky mindset, because that makes me want to play these games even less, because then Modern Warfare comes out or the Outer Worlds, and I'm like, ooh, shiny. And in the back of my mind, it's like, no, you get nothing. But sometimes all you have to do is one thing. And it could seem like a big deal, it could seem like not a big deal, it could seem like a hard thing to do or an easy thing to do. But that one thing is just to start what you've been putting off. Now, if you've got a laundry list, look at it. Pick one thing. Start it. Just one. Don't worry about the other things on that list. You focus on the one thing. This is something that I use to help me with my ADHD, and I think it works with procrastination as well. You just have to remind yourself, you don't have to finish it. Whatever you start, you don't have to finish that moment, right? You don't have to plan all of this out and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this from this time to this time, and then tomorrow I'm going to go to the next thing, and I have to get this done by... No. Because that just resets the trap, and you get stuck in that loop of burnout over and over and over again, like a hamster on a wheel that's not going anywhere. 9 times out of 10, when you do just start, and I mean just start, you may not want to stop. That's happened to me. So because of my ADHD, editing, it can be a struggle for me on terms of video editing, and just sitting there. It could be a lot because I'm just like doing one thing over and over again. Sometimes when I've reached the point I've been putting it off for quite some time. Once I start and I'm like, no, I'm gonna edit. I don't want to stop. I look up the time and I'm like, oh, I've been doing this for an hour. Oh, I could do a little more. But then I end up pushing something else off. But that's, it's something I have to work on as a person. Or you may start something and then you may stop for a little bit. And that's okay. It's okay to look at your list and say, well, I've got 5 things to do, and they all take a reasonably long amount of time. Well, let me start, cleaning the gutters today. And then tomorrow I'll work on repainting the room, right? Let's use those 2 examples. You start cleaning the gutters. You do about a third of the house, and you stop. That's okay. The next day you start painting the room, and you stop. That's okay. It's okay as long as you keep on that pace. Once you stop, don't stay stopped. Don't be like, oh, I did a third of it. That's good for like the next week. No. Finish it. The whole point is that you started something so you can finish it. And that's the most important thing. Before you know it, if you keep that pace, if you keep that rhythm, you'll be doing more and more things. And sometimes you'll do things without even thinking it, or you'll multitask without even thinking it. And you'll end up, for example, say you start going to the gym, right? You go one day. You liked how it felt, and you go to the next day. And the next day. And eventually, you've got a workout routine, and on top of that, you've cleaned up how you eat. So you're working hand in hand with one another, and it's melding perfectly. And now you've added an active rest day on your weekend where you go and play basketball with the boys. And you've done all these things all because you started with just one thing. Because if I told you, all right, you're going to start going to the gym, and then you're going to do this routine 3 times a week. On top of that, you have to clean up your diet. On top of that, you're going to do an active rest day on Saturday where you do something like swimming, racquetball, basketball, or yoga. You'd get burnt out pretty fast. And again, it's understandable. It's okay. We're only people. We're not machines. But if I said to you, hey, go to the gym tomorrow. That's all you got to do. You go to the gym. You come out and I go, how does it feel? You're like, I felt really good. I'm like, okay. Now you're going to go to the gym on Wednesday. You go on Wednesday. Same thing happens, and then I tell you you're going to go Friday. Now you've done a whole workout. You've done a 3-day split in a whole week. And then I say to you on Saturday, and that's just your first week. Then the following week, I say, oh, you're going to do the same thing as you did last week. And you're like, yeah, sure. And then I say, oh, by the way, I just, throughout the day, I want you to kind of keep track of just what you're eating. Nothing too intensive, but just, if you have something, just write it down. And you do that the second week. Now, by the end of the second week, you've incorporated 2 things that you were putting off, but you've done them at a pace which you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's not about how much you have or how fast you can get it done. Sometimes it's about just going at your pace and knowing that it's okay to go at your pace. That's about all the time I have for today. Thank you guys for listening to today's podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to subscribe for new episodes and share it with your friends and kind of get the word out there. This is a new thing, and I'm really excited to start doing it. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you as well. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed the video version of this, and click the subscribe button for more videos like this. And let me know down below or somewhere else online if you've been struck by procrastination, currently or previously, and how you're dealing with it now or how you've dealt with it in the past, whether it's worked out for you or not. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys next time.